defender straight to Kane. So I don't see how that could be offside. And then the fact that Kane had reeled away, celebrated, the fans were going absolutely crazy. When I was jumping up and down in my living room, and then we had to wait 4 or 5 minutes for a decision, which was so hairline. This is the problem, right? It's computer generated. It cannot be that accurate that you can decide something within millimeters if you've not got actually computers along the side of the pitch at every sort of, every possible interval to be able to do a proper cross section and digitize all this. They're using a bit of AI software, which depends on which angle it's taken. If you're that close, how can it be that accurate? I really don't think it can be down to the millimeter, like a toenail or something.
Well, this is the problem, isn't it? What are the tolerances you use for saying that someone is offside? Because you could go down to the nanometer, couldn't you? You could literally go crazy with this.
Yeah.
And they don't define any of this stuff. It's all very subjective. If it's subjective, then what's the point? You might as well just have it as it was before. You know,
and it's killing the game in terms of it's spontaneous joy, because I understand that everyone wants the right decision made, but do we know if that was the right decision?
Well, this is it. Had it gone in and it was awarded a goal, or what did go in, and it was awarded a goal, we would have been very happy, and sporting fans would have been gutted. So, it works both ways, doesn't it? Really.
It does, but I think it needs to be clear and obvious, or at least that there's an element of plausibility. If you've got something where you're using a computer generated simulation, and you're then talking about literally millimeters, I don't believe it can be that accurate. I think we should give the attacker the benefit of the doubt, whether that goes for us or against us, because it'll even itself out. Because I still feel that we're not able to really celebrate this. That's another thing. I don't see us ever getting rid of VAR, but it's changing the game, and I don't think it is. Many people are saying it's not for the better, and I don't know quite what we need to do about this. There has to be some sort of law change on VAR, I think, so we can go, okay, well, this is most likely to be given a goal. We're not going to be spending 4 or 5 minutes where computers trying to find very different angles and reasons why it isn't a goal. Sorry, Rich. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, well, I've got a couple of things to say on it. The first thing is a technical issue, because I work with visual data reconstruction in a very, very, very different setting. But I work with 3D modeling, and I work with, a lot of this. I'm making a couple of assumptions about how they're doing it, right? And I might be wrong, so I should say that. But the way I understand it, and this is a comment on the accuracy question that you've raised, Lee, you've both raised, but I know in order to be something like millimeter accurate on any scale, especially as they're taking images from a distance greater than a few meters, you need hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of images in order to reconstruct a scene, right? And you can do that using video images, and obviously we're looking, I don't know how many frames per second, it might be 128 frames per second or something. So they might have those images, but those images are all going to be very closely rectified, i.e. there isn't going to be an awful lot of triangulation in order to create the visual accuracy that you would need to get an actual millimeter level.
Exactly.
Centimeter level. So I know when I build 3D models of landscapes and stuff, we're talking about half meter accuracy at any distance greater than a few meters, unless you've got really, really, really tightly controlled image generation. And I know they're working with AI to try and do something about all that. But so, to sort of answer the accuracy thing, from somebody that works in a similar field, if not the same field, I have serious doubts about the accuracy of it. The second thing is, at which point do they take at which point is the image reconstructed? At which point in that process? Is it
the
ball has been kicked? Is it last night? It was Emerson Royale's head. Is it when the ball contacts his head? Is it when the ball leaves his head? Is it when the ball is said to be free from his head? So, I mean, think about the same thing with goal line technology. So you can't call it a goal unless the entire ball has crossed the line and there is green space in between the ball. So is there the same sort of thing being employed in VAR that we don't know about? I mean, I often wonder, like, you know, do they do it with sound? I mean, there are microphones everywhere. So, like with cricket, you know, marginal decisions are used. They use a microphone near the stumps, don't they? And they there is no audible touch. Therefore, it wasn't, you know. And is there something about the sound? How do they then rectify the sound versus the visual, because there's a delay? I mean, the whole fucking thing is a nightmare from perspective. The second thing, I said this last night to you guys after the game, and strangely enough, Ramon Vega was on the telly this morning saying a very similar thing. I don't know if you saw it. There should be a time cut off, because the clear and obvious thing, the defining factor. And if you've got a minute or 30 seconds to look at it and you can't fucking make a decision up either way in that time, neither clear nor obvious, therefore you cannot overturn the referee's on-field decision. And, you know, like
that's a good point.
You know, in this halfway house where we've got an emerging technology and only a half understanding of how it works, surely that would be the thing. We'd say, look, you've got until they get the fucking ball to the centre spot to make a decision. Don't do it in that time. You can't turn it.
It's reasonable. I mean, we don't even need to go down the line of you know, clear daylight. You can say, right, his whole leg is offside there, or half his body is offside. You know, but if you're talking about the fractions of millimeters where you can't even personally see, when you look at that blue and red line together, where their toenail is off there, that it cannot be that accurate. So therefore, you give the attacker the benefit of the doubt, whether that goes for you or against you, because at the moment, it you know, as I say, it's adversely affecting the game. I don't know quite what we do about it, because there's so much money being invested in VAR now that that they're never going to get rid of it. But you know, I think it has to come down to being much more obvious and maybe much more, you know, and I don't know if there's a way that the referees trumps even VAR. I don't know, but yeah, it's a frustrating one. I mean, and obviously we're frustrated, right? You know, I know I definitely am, because of yesterday's, you know, the goal that was ruled off for us. You know, whether we should have won it overall. They had a great first half. We had a better second half. But it's not about whether it's fair or not in terms of the result. It's about, you know, is that decision right? And we can't say for sure it is.
No, that's right. And I think this is the whole problem, isn't it? I mean, we've just described so many different factors of VAR there, but really the biggest issue all the way through it is that it's subjective. So even the clear and obvious, this is the thing that I say all the time, is clear and obvious isn't clear and obvious. How do you define that? So at what point do you say that was a clear and obvious mistake? What does that mean? That's just ambiguous, isn't it? So I just don't know what they're going to do with it, because, as you know, you're quite right, Lee, they're not going to get rid of it. There's too many people invested in this. There's too many people that don't, you know, they're almost a confirmation bias going on that VAR is the right thing to do. I know in the World Cup, I think they're trialing some AI with offsides, which will be good. So at least we might be able to see something improved in the World Cup, and they'll bring it back into the Premier League and Champions League. But
perhaps you know,
it's just it's so fraught with all the technical issues Rich has outlined, all the subjective issues that we've just been describing, that at no point does it really ever work. It just isn't viable.
So I don't know. Maybe they have to go along the line of. I know in tennis they have that sort of Hawkeye system, don't they? Which is basically a beam going across certain. So if you had that intermittently across certain points of the ground, perhaps you'd give you a more accurate in terms of who's broken that line or not. I don't know.
But then with both tennis and cricket, you've got a much simpler situation. You've got a ball hitting something, and it's almost like very basic physics, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas with offside, which is really what we're talking about here, rather than any other incident of VAR, so it's not VAR per se, it's really offsides that are the real issue, is that you've got problems with closing velocities, you've got 50 frames per second. It's just.
I suppose another thing is also the fact that they keep changing the damn rules every season. You know, in terms of what's a handball, what's not a handball, what's there's so many things that are confusing. Where they're heading back.
That's David Ellery, isn't it?
Yeah.
David Ellery is head of IFAB, and I think half of IFAB is the British Football Associations.
Yeah.
So it's us that make the decisions. So we're doing it. It's crazy.
Right. Anyway, so in his post-match comments, I mean, he got sent off, didn't he? After that, because I think he'd lost the plot, Conte. But in his post-match, he'd actually said a couple of things here that just quickly bring up. One of them was that he didn't think the decision was honest. So I'm wondering whether that might come back and bite him.
It might do. Yeah, they don't like that, do they?
No. And the other thing was that he said that a big club, this wouldn't have happened to. So does he not think we're a big club?
No, but I think you take his point. You take his point, though, don't you? Because whether or not we can be critical of him alluding to us not being a big club, I think what he was saying is that decision would never have been overturned at the Bernabeu, and I think I don't think it would have been.
No.
Whether or not that is a good thing or not, I don't know. But I mean, as far as it goes for his comments, him getting the red card, I know he was very animated, but from what I saw, and I wasn't paying all that much attention to it because at the time I was too busy swearing on the WhatsApp group. But it looked to me like he was just standing there going, "Why?
Yeah. But I think the ref was obviously really stressed, wasn't he? He'd obviously got himself stressed over those 4 or 5 minutes, like all of us, And then I think he just probably thought, I'll show the red. That will get everybody off my back.
Get you out the fucking way, But I mean, as far as it goes for his press conference comments afterwards, I'm all for it. I mean, they need just to pull shit out like this. Whether it's him or whether it's Klopp, he's very good at doing it. We don't always agree with what he says, but these people, their opinions carry a lot of weight. And if dissent is going to continue to come, it's the only way they're ever going to do anything about it.
Well, that's it. And then, I mean, it was a very, very brief press conference, about 3 minutes. He then just basically let rip into this decision. He says, I'm very, very upset. And he couldn't believe the decision. He went on to say what we just mentioned about, this wouldn't have happened at a big club. Then said the club needs to get involved.
I thought that was interesting because that's something that I'm sure Levy doesn't want to get involved in.
Yeah, maybe. But I think it may be whether where the club or how the club would get involved with something like that. I wonder. I mean, he stormed out, didn't he? I mean, it could have been just raw emotion. But and he mentioned if this means that we go out next round, he says something needs to be done about it. The club need to get involved. So whether this is then loading the pressure back onto UEFA to be, if there is any marginal decision for it not to go against us, I don't know, being sort of Machiavellian here. But I don't know.
I thought Conte was throwing his toys out the pram a bit, but and I can understand it because we're all pissed off after that. But it's just a lot of pressure at the moment. I think he's struggling because he's not getting us playing as he wants us to. And anything like this is obviously going to add pressure on top of what he's already experiencing. I think this is quite normal. Really.
One of the things I was going to suggest, I think we mentioned in the WhatsApp thread, is that when it comes to Conte's system, he seems to heavily rely upon a certain type of player, a certain level of player. And we're in the middle of this kind of rebuilding process where perhaps some of those players aren't quite the players for the jigsaw he needs. And you kind of get, there's always this sort of Damocles hanging over us of whether he'll be here or he won't be here to see that project through. It feels really urgent all the time, doesn't it? That we need to make this happen and back him quickly before he changes his mind. And if it is partly that we need the players for his system, I mean, there's good and bad in that, right? I mean, we've got to invest heavily to get that, but that's pretty.
Yeah, you can see that we you can see that we need better players in certain areas.